sticking with football, let's start with the Minnesota Vikings, whose biggest question heading into training camp this fall is just how good is J.J. McCarthy? McCarthy obviously missed all of last season with a messed up knee, but has been a full participant so far this offseason. T.J. Hockenson spoke to what he's seen from his quarterback so far.
A young guy that's hungry and he wants to learn and he wants to get better. I mean, he's making a trip down here soon, and so he wants to be great in this league, and I respect that. He really wants it. He really wants everything to be perfect. He's a perfectionist for sure, and which is awesome because that's how you need to be as a quarterback in this league.
What's really exciting, if Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy hit, and they both have really good offensive coaches. So Jaden McDaniels flourished with a defensive coach. Drake May, really, really talented, looks like he's going to work. He had a defensive coach that didn't work. So these two guys have offensive coaches. If they hit, and I think we both think Penix is good enough, especially indoors, he'll be good. You could have a 5-quarterback first round because Bo Nix works. And Peyton's going to make him work maybe to a higher level than anybody outside of Andy Reid can make him work. I always get excited when you have one of those Herbert, Tua, Burrow drafts. It's like nothing's worse than the 1 o'clock window on Sunday, John, with bad quarterback play. So I'm rooting for it to work.
Totally. 3 for 3 is a little easier, though, than 5 for 5 or 6 for 6. I mean, historically, some of these guys are not going to work out. Jaden Daniels is. Bo Nix clearly is going to be solid. There's some, a lot of pressure on Drake May. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy. I think it's very difficult for a young player, and he's essentially a rookie, right, because he didn't play last year. The expectations aren't just, hey, just be competitive. It's win, 12, 13, 14 games.
Because of Sam.
Yeah. Win games in the playoffs, compete for the NFC. On paper, subtract the quarterback, you could argue they have a top 2 or 3 roster in the NFL.
They upgraded their own line significantly.
The thing that kind of gives me pause is their head coach, who's an offensive guy, fantastic play caller, is a pass game guy, likes to throw the ball. JJ comes from Harbaugh, who likes to call runs. So it's going to be fascinating early on. I'm pretty sure week 1, Colin, Bears, Vikings, Monday Night Football, everyone's going to be watching. So welcome to the NFL, kid.
Is that the first Monday Night Football game?
I'm pretty sure that is.
Wow. Yeah. That is a good Monday Night Football game.
Sticking in the NFC.
Okay. Well, we're going to stick it with the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah. I think there's a little confusion with how some of these stats work with, the likelihood of someone like a J.J. McCarthy being great or not because of other quarterbacks in the draft. In a vacuum, before we have any other information, and we're all, you have 5 quarterbacks that are drafted or whatever, then, we could say, okay, statistically, we believe that, the likelihood of all 5 of these being true top starters in the NFL is unlikely, and that's a fair assessment. But now, just because we've seen some of these other players play and have success, like Jaden and Bo and whatnot, it doesn't now decrease the chances of JJ McCarthy now being successful in the NFL. It's a statistical hallucination. It's not JJ McCarthy would have had a better chance at being a better quarterback if Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix actually struggled. It sounds good in theory, but it's I always talk about this. I always reference this for Vegas. If you ever go to any casino, really, they have all these other numbers, and they have the history of the roulette tables of these are all the numbers and the colors that came up and stuff, and it's just it's all meaningless. It's all nonsense. It doesn't actually mean anything. You don't look at it at all. It's just there to confuse you. And so, again, in a vacuum, yes, the chances of all these quarterbacks being great is, not in the favor. But at the same time, the NFL is always changing. And I always reject when we use historical odds, when we live clearly in a world that is changing so insanely. And just because something is unlikely doesn't mean that it's not going to happen or that it's impossible. I always reject the analysis of the Chiefs aren't going to three-peat, and they obviously didn't. But the Chiefs aren't going to three-peat because we've never seen it before, or you know what, like going into last season, the Chiefs are. I'm not going to predict the Chiefs to win because that means that they three-peated, and that's pretty much impossible to do. And it's just like that's not like that sounds logical, but it's actually not. It's actually not, and you can't judge the 2024 Chiefs based on the fact that they also won a Super Bowl in 2022, because that's what you'd be doing if you're looking at like a three-peat trajectory. You're like, well, they technically won in 22 and 23, so therefore it's like, nah, it doesn't make any sense. That means nothing to me. But is this team different from 22 to 23? Or in the opposite end, where people are like, oh, they're clearly going to go because look what they did. Like someone said in the comment section recently, saying, oh, like clearly the Chiefs are still going to win the AFC because that's what they do. And it's just like, that's not real analysis. And so it's not real analysis to kind of doubt JJ McCarthy because of previous years in the drafts and how many quarterbacks hit year to year. Like you have to now not only put everything in a vacuum, but also now just put JJ individually in a vacuum and be like, how is he as a quarterback? And then put him in another vacuum with the Minnesota Vikings. How will he be with the Minnesota Vikings? Where does he stand? Not in relation to Jaden Daniels, not in relation to Bo Nix, not in relation to a quarterback draft in 2007. Because it just doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing. So it's fascinating, and it is such a fascinating matchup because the pressure is all on the Bears and Caleb Williams. And I remember when the schedule was first released, and I talked about that, where I'm like, listen, I don't think there should be like all this extra pressure on the Bears and Caleb Williams and whatnot. But like going up against JJ McCarthy, if you get outdueled by JJ and JJ just looks better, more comfortable, whatever, even just a win, even if just the Vikings win and JJ just clearly isn't a liability, it's not like JJ has to like, go off for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns and, and pick up a touch, and a rushing touchdown or something. But like, as long as he just like plays a good game and they win, a decent enough game, it's just like, it'll already be like, oh my God, clear JJ is better than Caleb Williams. Like it would just run wild. Just even leading into this game, make no mistake about it, Vikings fans, it's going to be all about Caleb Williams. All about Caleb Williams. Who needs the win more, Caleb or JJ? And it's just still all going to be centered and filtered through the Bears and Caleb Williams. And in week 1, JJ McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings have the opportunity to just be like, guys, we live in our own world. We live in our own Minnesota Vikings world. We don't live in the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson world. We got our own greatness that we're making here. All right? We're the Minnesota Vikings. We got Kevin O'Connell. We got JJ McCarthy. We got Justin Jefferson. We got Hawkinson. We can go on and on and on and on and on. Like, this is, relax. We know you reached conclusions years ago about these various franchises, coaches, quarterbacks, etc. We don't care about any of that. We're writing our own narrative here. And again, it starts in week 1. So it's pretty fascinating. They have an interesting schedule because the schedule has some brutal games. Can't be denied. The Commanders is going to be a really tough game. The Ravens is going to be a really tough game. The Eagles is going to be a really tough game. The Chargers will be a really tough game, and that defense should be great. Like, and you're going up against, at this point, it's just the way the NFL is right now, a lot of experienced quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson. You get this weird game against the Seattle Seahawks with Sam Darnold. It's and obviously the division as a whole is just always good. I shouldn't say always, but it's for the foreseeable future right now. It seems like it's going to be a pretty big gauntlet. But yeah, I look at a schedule like this, and it's almost like I believe in Michael Penix as well. But when you hit the ground running with the Chicago Bears versus the Minnesota Vikings, JJ versus Caleb, It almost feels like week 2 is a little bit of a letdown. Penix just doesn't have that energy right now. And it'll be interesting go up against the Bengals by week 3. But then it's like Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. And then you got like whoever's going to be the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. You're like, whatever. And then you're back in action against like the Eagles. Like that'll be box office. Chargers, that'll be box office. Obviously, Detroit Lions, that'll be box office. And then the Baltimore Ravens. Like, you know, it's a tough schedule when you got to go up against the Eagles, the Chargers, the Lions, the Ravens, the Bears, the Packers, all in a row. And then another sneaky, weird, emotional game, depending how the season's unfolding for the Vikings, against the Seattle Seahawks with Sam Darnold. And then against the Commanders, Jaden Daniels. Like, it's that week 7 to week 14 is pretty wild. I mean, it really is. And although I don't think the Cowboys are going to be this great team, you still now got to go to Dallas. It's still an interesting experience going to Dallas and whatnot. Yeah. And then you got to go back across the country to New York. And it'll be cold probably, I assume, by then. So this is a tough schedule, specifically with the order of the schedule. But if they get through it, they'll definitely be battle tested. And I think J.J. McCarthy will certainly get a crash course in some brutal stretches of football. And I think some of these, right? Yeah, some of these are in London, right? Week 4 in Dublin and week 5 in London, right? Which is also going to be pretty weird and unique. So you're international for 2 weeks, then you get a bye, and then you go through a pretty brutal stretch of games. Yeah, man. I am so fascinated, man. I am so fascinated. I keep trying to think of which more like unique teams are really grabbing my attention of like where it can just go in so many different directions. And I feel like right now it's the Minnesota Vikings, Las Vegas Raiders, and the Denver Broncos as the 3 more like, obviously the Ravens and the Bills and the Eagles and whatnot, but like in terms of the teams that don't seemingly have as much momentum or as much belief behind them, I think those 3 teams are really, really fascinating to me. And the Minnesota Vikings are right there. So yeah, JJ's going to have to hit the ground running. There's no denying that. Even games that could have, settled him a little bit, like week 4 and week 5, you're in Dublin and London. It's just different. There's just a lot more going on. It's just different than if you're doing it at home. So, yeah, man. I can't wait. We're getting closer. A couple months away. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings? The chances of him being successful in relation to, I guess, the other quarterbacks in his draft. How quickly do you think he can hit the ground running? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.